Stop. I can't take it anymore.
Oh, I do the live ones too. Yes, I know. I saw your act in the theater. You're really quite good.
Quite a certain harmful habit.
Stop it now, I need it.
I don't think he felt...
Hello and welcome back. We are breaking up with RBS. This is episode number 49, and I am Tawny Santabria.
And I'm JDK Winnikin, and once again, back in the space to debunk the junk, those stories that do not serve us, and therefore making our lives simpler. And this is our 49th time talking about some element of that. How about that?
And we're not going to stop.
Not going to stop.
Mm-mm.
We're going after triple digits next.
Yes, we are.
I guess.
We'll see. We'll see. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. How are you, Tawny?
I am doing really well. It's sunny outside. Summer's here.
I know.
Finally.
I'm
glad about that.
Yeah, depending on where you are in the country or the world, you may not feel the same. But in the Pacific Northwest, we really value our summers. And this time of year is beautiful because the sun is up early and stays up late, but still does go down, unlike Alaska,
yes,
where it never goes down this time of year.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. I like that I can throw a Frisbee around at 10 o'clock at night.
I don't, because I'm in bed by 9. But...
That's right. You and your bedtime.
Yeah, I have a pretty strict bedtime.
I have one too, but it's later than that.
Yeah. Well, my morning is pretty early.
That's
yeah,
true.
yeah, like that early morning
sunrise.
So I get to catch that.
Yeah, but the energy is amazing.
Yes,
right now, and
yes,
I've noticed in lots of places, people are brighter, right, and people tend to, people are moving around, but they're also more frenetic, more energy, more moving around. More people in more places. And then I noticed the negative sides. There was a lot of traffic the other day. Everybody getting out for the weekend. And
yes, there
is that.
part.
There is that.
Yeah.
There's that. But it is, it does have an effect on us, doesn't it? The environment and the feeling of the environment.
Always. We are not an island unto ourselves, right? So whatever is around us is absolutely going to impact our space inside the body, and knowing how and what that looks like for ourselves is probably pretty important.
Yeah, not probably, definitely. That's the word I choose. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like
so, yeah, it's a good time to be up here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good time.
Don't tell people that though.
So everybody says.
Yeah, we got to keep this a secret, right? That's what I was always told when I moved up here 20 some odd years ago. No, don't tell people.
Well, this is days like today, and this time of the year is what I call the Chamber of Commerce days, right? This is when all the ads get shot for businesses to come to the Pacific Northwest or visit the Pacific Northwest. This is beautiful right now. January is a little tougher.
Sometimes June is too.
It was this year.
Yeah, it was rough. Anyways, we could talk about the weather.
You probably could.
For the whole show, but
but seasons is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
We learn to deal with it up here. Everybody deals with it somewhere, in some way, shape, or form, and everybody has their cadence with that. That whether we're talking about physical seasons or emotional seasons or whatever. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think I like the thing about weather, and that we've talked a lot in the past about sort of externals and how they impact us, right? And the weather is one of those too, right? And so being aware of our externals and how we experience those, whether it's weather related or noise related or work related or being around family related type stuff. How do we keep ourselves from getting all stressed and worked up and anxious and all of the things about those externals?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is just being aware that that's a thing.
Yeah.
That externals matter. You mentioned, not being an island to ourselves. I think a lot of us wish we were, or we tell ourselves we wish we were.
Yeah.
Or that we're immune to it. Or as if to admit that, yeah, you're better on sunny days than on cloudy days would be somehow a sign of weakness, even though there's a biological component to that.
It reminds me of someone I was speaking with earlier in the week, this idea of sort of being a super person, right? Well, I should be able to, either I was able to do that in the past and it didn't exhaust me, or in theory, I can handle this one particular thing. we don't tend to look at as a full bucket. Like how how are we depleting ourselves? And not without any sort of attention to how we're recharging or renewing ourselves. So we really had to dissect this whole idea about being a super person, whether it was a superwoman, not necessarily good
No.
for us to
No.
believe that that's available to us.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the first thing I think of is if I could be a Superman, then I could have the cool S on my
Well,
shirt.
of course, but I don't. The Superwoman isn't really about the cool S.
That's true.
I think that's a little more stressful than that.
Hey, it's stressful flying around the world at the speed of light.
Is it? Yeah, that
Because that's a real thing.
and then having to reverse the spin.
Oh,
I think I
man,
remember something about that.
We're
too.
going into the Wayback Machine. That's Superman the movie, 1978.
Oh, shoot!
Yeah, we're
I do
going back.
remember that. Okay.
Anyway.
Okay. Anyways.
Well, but you know what you said got me thinking is that look how quickly we went from talking about the externals and then all the things you addressed. How do we replenish? How do we take care of ourselves? That's where the internals come in. So recognizing the externals and their effect and their importance and how much we do connect with them and our bodies are aware of them. Then we also have to have a relationship and an awareness of the internals. You talked about your bedtime, food,
and
exercise.
And I think, I think taking care of the internals allows us to deal with the externals.
Yeah.
That's the part. If we're not taking care of the internals, then we're going to be swept up into the chaos of the externals. Thrown curve. We weren't paying attention, right? And so taking care of those internals allow externals.
Do you have like a super internal that you talk about with your clients, or like one that's like, maybe we all have heard the basic ones, right? Enough sleep, enough diet, enough. Is there like a super one, like a sneaky one?
What I do is I look for those non-negotiables for ourselves. I feel like those non-negotiables really are the super ones. Certainly, I always go back to sleep, but that's a non-negotiable for me, right? If we don't get enough sleep for ourselves, then the rest of the day that we're awake, we're going to be on reserves, we're going to be on fumes, right? Because we didn't fuel up properly overnight. I do feel like if we're looking at particular things as more bang for our buck, right? Sleep is going to be one of those for sure. But with my clients, I really look at what are their non-negotiables, like what are the ones, and sometimes many times they have no idea.
And it's a whole different concept.
Yeah, totally. And so we sort of research for those. And a lot of times those are based off of values or just then paying better attention and increasing awareness around how, what impacts us and how that impacts us.
Yeah.
Somebody I was talking to today has developed study walks for herself. So she discovered off of a conversation that we had last week that she brings her index cards to study because she's in school, and she has developed these study walks for herself. And because the walking is so important, but she couldn't figure out a way to fit that in.
Oh, clever.
I really loved that idea. So she takes her index cards and she goes for a walk and she just studies as she's walking.
Does she walk like across intersections and stuff?
I think I gotta believe, because she's pretty smart. So I didn't ask that question, but I gotta believe she looks up before she crosses the road. I know it does happen that we don't when we're on our phones, but I'm hoping those index cards give enough of a break for her to be able to pay better attention.
That is a focused piece of attention rather than scrolling or trying to answer something.
That's a bit more tricky because that has happened. Yeah.
So is that becoming a non-negotiable for her?
Yeah. We talked about it as a non-negotiable. Like these things, I think about sometimes for some of us taking a shower is a non-negotiable. We don't see it as that, but we tend to do that regularly, or brushing our teeth, for example, or eating breakfast. We do these particular things with regularity, maybe on automatic pilot. We're not even really thinking about it, but we can incorporate some of those renewers and rechargers in our life in the same way if we start to think about them as those non-negotiables.
Got it.
We're just more mindful and more aware, and we're naming things for what they are, as opposed to being on sort of like automatic pilot in our lives.
Sure. Because you're right. Because we do have those things we probably don't call non-negotiables, but really are.
Yeah.
And then we have the ones we probably have to be more conscious of, which might be the ones we have to work on.
Well,
or be more intentional about, maybe is the best way to put it.
yeah. Well, it's about, habit building, right? Like
Yes.
if we're not currently doing something out of habit and we want it to be something that we're going to do with regularity, we do have to keep it top of mind long enough for it to become a habit. And that doesn't mean it's the 21 days or the things that we hear necessarily.
Yeah.
It's for ourselves long enough time. And that's where we get tricked, right? We want to be able to just make a decision, have it nicely fit into our lives so that we don't even have to think about it. And then if we have to think about it, we tell ourselves that that's a problem. What's wrong with me that I have to think about this and I can't make this happen? Right? So all of a sudden, then we're making it much a bigger deal actually, and working with it out of stress than just accepting that we have to give it a little bit more thought until it becomes automatic. Easy as that.
Right. And that could be however long it is.
Yeah.
Right. And for me, the one that I'm still working on with that is sleep. I'm better with the bedtime than I ever used to be. But if that was still a negotiation, or an agreement in my life, like something was becoming non-negotiable, it'd be more like the negotiations between North and South Korea. Ongoing, pretty tense, pretty open-ended, and still unclear. Where that's a terrible analogy, but it's funny, right? We're laughing. Anyway, my point is that for me, having talked about this with you originally, I'm so glad that I adopted that approach, that I'm just going to keep working at it. I'm not going to worry about when it's going to happen. Am I going to do it 21 days in a row?
Yeah.
I am going to invest in the effort, because I do feel better. When I nail it, I experience it the next day. I do feel better.
Yeah.
And other days I don't always nail it. I notice it. And then the flip side, I try not to rake myself over the coals either. Just get back to it. I think it does work. And because there's less of a story and because there's less of stress around it, it's actually easier to follow.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be like you have to do it perfectly either. None of these do we have to do perfectly to get enough of a benefit.
Yeah.
I am really dedicated to my sleep, but sometimes I don't get a very good sleep, or I can't say I stay up too late because I don't, but for whatever reason, I might get awoken in the middle of the night.
Right.
And not be able to go back to sleep. Right. Sure. So, but we all have our things.
It's about, in that case, you're setting yourself up for the best of all possible options, right? Because you're going to have a much better chance of getting good night's sleep following your bedtime than you would if you stayed up late. That sounds obvious.
Yes. And here's the other part of it is because of the work that I do, I can't be yawning in the middle of a session. That wouldn't be very pleasant for the person I'm talking to.
No.
So for me, sleep is maybe I might have to be, this might seem very like rigid, but because of what I do, I need to be able to have that intact and work in that pretty well. Right. So that might not be the case for somebody else. And so there can be a little bit more flexibility around sleep, but there could be something else that they've got to be really diligent about that helps in their day that I don't have to be super diligent about necessarily maybe.
Yeah. I'm kind of thinking, what would those be? I've noticed for sure the sleep is huge for me. I've noticed that exercise and movement is a big thing for me. Continuing to move forward in just taking care of my body, getting to know it better. I work with a personal trainer who I really enjoy. His approach is more about getting stronger, getting more aware of how your body works, what works best for it. And then everything else follows. So he's not outcome based either. Just get stronger. Everything else will take care of itself. You want to feel better, you want to look better, and all the benefits that come with that. Just concentrate on doing it regularly, getting stronger, listen to your body.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And there's so much research that's coming out now, just the benefits of walking.
Yeah.
Walking a lot through your day. So I love that study walk, right? But sometimes we don't really think of that as being as beneficial as it actually is for
Mhm.
us. We'll go and do the 30-minute workout and then sit all day long because that's what we have to do for work perhaps, and think that we've done the best job we can for our body.
Mhm.
But that walking actually more during the day
Yeah.
is going to actually probably be a better benefit than the 30-minute exercise
Mhm.
over the long haul.
Yep.
So we don't wanna sacrifice, so I would say like a super, you talked about the super whatever you talked about, I don't even remember, but I remember the word super, and walking would be one of those super things.
Super things, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's something that everybody can do.
Well,
Well, to
yes,
right.
most people can do
Most
that,
people
yeah.
can do that,
Mhm.
right? And yeah, it's really interesting. More and more comes out that for all the benefits of, high intensity
Mhm.
training and stuff, depending what you're doing, the regular consistency of movement
Yep.
goes so much further than we think, and so it's interesting to me, the more time goes by, we talk about these things. It's the simplest things sometimes with practiced consistently or practiced with the intention of making them more consistent that make the biggest differences. It's not the big things. It's not the big flashy things for all the benefit that they have, right? It wouldn't do me any good to go to my trainer once a week if I wasn't going back into the gym a few other times, if I wasn't getting on my exercise bike, if I wasn't walking. I do all those things.
Yeah. I always think about, all of these things as sort of like an ice cream sundae.
I like
So,
that.
yeah. So, lots of folks wait for the vacation to recharge and renew. Well, that would be like the cherry on top of the sundae, right? Like, those are great, and that cherry on top of sundae is pretty darn good,
Yeah, it
or
is.
the nuts, depending if you like that crunch, right? So,
Mhm.
that's great, but we don't want to have the cherry and the nuts all by themselves, right?
Right.
Like, we don't wanna wait for just that
Mm.
to then get recharged and renewed. That ice cream all by itself, even though it doesn't have all the little flash on top, is a crucial part of the ice cream sundae.
You can't
It
have it without it.
No, right? And so that ice cream is all about the daily things that we're doing. I just came up with that.
Really?
Uh-huh,
In the moment.
uh-huh.
That's a pretty good one.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's gonna
Just
have
came
to
up.
make it into the book, I think.
Okay, yeah, we'll make sure we write that down.
The cherry on top. What a
Yeah.
great title.
Oh. Oh, we can talk a lot about, I love the cherry on top, so there will be a lot of things to talk about with
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that idea that if to go without it doesn't make any sense,
Mm-mm.
right? To take out the ice cream, you don't have the sundae. You got
Yes.
cherry and a bunch of toppings.
Yeah, so we don't wanna wait every 6 months for the cherry with a bunch of toppings because that's not gonna renew and recharge us enough
Mhm.
to deal with our stress levels on the daily.
Mhm. Yeah, and so those non-negotiables, right, in that case, a non-negotiable would be, make sure you have ice cream with your ice cream sundae.
Yes. That would be part of the, because otherwise you'd have to call it something different.
Right. It'd be an ear of corn or something like that.
It would be something very different.
Right. Yeah, that's wow, that is a really interesting example, and I suppose we could come up with
Yeah.
a bunch of other ones, but so those non-negotiables, and then combined with that recognition of how our externals,
Mhm,
affect us and
mhm.
what that can do, can guide us along through most things, can't it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that, I think about the weather, and certainly we could go indoors if it's raining.
Mhm.
Right, so we can sort of play with some, um, degree of exposure to the weather to some degree, but it does come in through the windows, and we do see it, and so we are impacted by that a little bit, right?
Mhm.
Um, and then there's other externals that we can actually protect ourselves even further from, that
Like,
might be important to take a look at. For example, a constant stream of news
oh, yeah.
might not be the best external
Yeah.
because that's gonna rev up the fight or flight system in the
Mhm.
body, And then we're going to have to constantly try to get that ventral vagal activated. But we don't do that because then the next story comes in and then we're stressed again. So there are some things that we can actually limit our exposure to. And that could be a part of a non-negotiable too, if
Yeah.
we decided that that was going to be something we wanted to give ourselves a little bit of physical distance from or a break from so that we can manage internally. It doesn't take as much effort or focus or concentration if we're battling, if we're not battling that constantly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know for me, one of my non-negotiables is I'm not looking at any screens at least an hour before bed.
Sure.
In part because of the news, in part because of the distraction, scrolling through social media or something, which just feeds the same beast oftentimes. But then also this, the more and more scientific awareness that those lights in your eyes before you try to go to sleep is not the best thing for you, right? So I read instead, or I listen to music, or I meditate before I go to bed. So much better, and usually the sooner I start that process, gets me to bed sooner.
Sure.
Right. So that's my way through the North Korea, South Korea impasse is I do that. That's my demilitarized zone. Oh, geez. Pushing this too hard. Really pushing this too hard. But yeah.
That reminds me, one that I didn't actually realize I had, but I do, is when I wake up in the morning, I do have my phone by my bed because I don't have a home phone, blah, 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 all the things, right? But when I wake up in the morning, I don't look at my phone until I get out of bed. So instead of waking up, grabbing my phone, scrolling this, reading this, spending another, 30 minutes in bed or whatever it is that I might be doing, or if I wake up in the middle of the night and I can't go back to sleep, never get my phone out.
That's a good one.
Never, right? Because I know what's going to happen if I do. So those two pieces are non-negotiables. Also, didn't really know I had them, but now I just learned that I did.
There you go.
Mhm.
That's a good one. I do the same thing. I keep my phone on the other side. I keep it on the dresser. So it's my alarm also. So I set the alarm, put it on there, but I turn the ringer off. The people who really need to break through in the middle of the night, I have them listed in my phone as people who can break through that. Right. So don't worry about that, like missing the emergency or whatever. But yeah, I try to do the same thing. Like if I get up, I try to check the time on my watch, and if I can't go back to sleep, I try to read or I try to just lay in bed. I try not to turn on a screen. I don't always succeed. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
But that's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a better one would be if I did have some physical distance from my phone, because I know those waves,
Oh yeah.
supposedly, if you're too close. So that could be something to think about, sort of to put my phone further away from me. But I don't feel like I need to, in terms of at least regulating my use.
Yeah.
But certainly the waves of
health
things that
benefits,
aren't good for us
Yeah.
might be too close.
It's interesting how day in, day out these things are, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
We're not talking about any, fad diet or anything like that. We're talking about some basic stuff that we all face. Just a reminder that all of this is right. It's right in our laps. It's not anything we have to invent.
Yep. Small, minor tweaks in our day can be super helpful for recharge and renewal. Even if we're not even looking at like meditation and presence and all of those kinds of things, we could, if maybe we're not ready for that because it feels however it feels, but just these minor tweaks around exposing ourselves to those externals and then being able to, put in some lifestyle habits that are going to help the body manage the stress related to externals could be super helpful.
Yeah. I know for me, when I stopped looking at screens right up till I went to bed and I started reading and, just kind of getting myself wound down, the effects of that I thought would be like, it'd be like tossing a small rock into a pond and then the ripples would come out. You'd be able to see them. When I really nail that, it's like throwing a boulder into a pond. It is a big effect on that night and then the next day by extension. And I have some days where I'm like, man, why did I fight this for so long? And then other days I'm like, I'm going to fight this. Again, kind of a weird armistice between the two, but it's better than it used to be.
Yeah.
I didn't used to be in that spot, right?
Mm-hmm.
That uneasy negotiation, I was never there. And you know firsthand how much I didn't want to do that.
I do. I had to twist your arm and all kinds of things, make, threaten you with this or that, or, it's just rough, but here we are. So
Here we are.
That's good.
Yeah. And it's an ongoing set of adjustments, right? You learn new things, you make new realizations, and getting into the body and breathing and recognizing what your body needs and what it's telling you really helps those non-negotiables kind of come to life. They become more visible. That's how I've experienced it.
Absolutely. Yep. And then we feel more in control of ourselves, not in control of life outside of us, but control of ourselves and empowered.
Yeah. And it makes us feel better about a lot of the externals.
Yeah.
Interesting how that works.
I know.
Anyway, you want to get back out in the sunshine?
Yes. It's still so sunny. Yes. I gotta soak that up.
I know. Right. All right. Well, hopefully wherever you are, you're able to soak up the sunshine without it being too hot. But wherever you are, please keep taking care of yourselves. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Breaking Up with Our BS. Thank you so much for subscribing to it as a podcast, leaving us reviews. Come visit our Facebook page at Breaking Up with Our BS. We have a YouTube channel if you'd like to see this whole thing go in person. However you're connecting with us, we will see you next week. And until then, I am JDK Winnikin.
And I'm Tawny Santabria.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you soon.
How you all feel tonight?
Stop. I can't take it anymore.
Oh, I do the live ones too. Yes, I know. I saw your act in the theater. You're really quite good.
Quite a certain harmful habit.
Stop it now, I'm leaving.
I don't think he felt anything after the crash.
Un second, Janillo.